Hello, I'm Charlie Doan with the Alpena-Montmorency Conservation District, and we're out here today to demonstrate how to control your autumn olive issues. At our district, our mission is to serve, advise, and educate landowners on all things about their property. And this is a very common thing that we see. It's a very common problem that comes into our office. Autumn olive is everywhere. And if you have autumn olive, this video should help you learn how to control it properly so it doesn't keep spreading across your property. And we do this in concert with our partners, the National Resource Conservation Service, the NRCS, and Brian Zabel is here from NRCS as well to talk to you a little bit about a few programs that he has available. And then of course our forest and wildlife ecologist is going to be doing most of the instruction today, Dr. Greg Corris.
My name's Brian Zabel. I'm a district conservationist with USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. So today we're at a landowner's property, and what we want to do is show you how to manage your property with invasive species such as autumn olive. So to start this whole process off, I really encourage that you stop in at your local conservation district office. NRCS is generally co-located with them. And NRCS, we can provide technical and financial assistance to address invasive species such as autumn olive. So really start off, visit your field office, and we can help funnel you through whatever programs might be applicable to address the problem. And with that, being that it is a costly project, we'll also give you an idea how much financial assistance that you may be eligible for, and then what the overall cost might also be involved with doing a project like that. So I encourage you, stop in at your field office, and we can point you in the right direction and help you enjoy your land. So today we're joined by Mr. Dave Dillon. He has property here in Alpena County, and Dave's property is pretty unique. On the property we have some hay ground. Where we're standing right now we would call associated agriculture land, where maybe we're aimed more towards wildlife. And then he also has forest land and also a river that runs through the property. So a pretty unique piece of property, a lot of potential. So Dave, owning this property, what are some of your goals for your property?
We have an overwhelming issue with autumn olive, and that's the very reason we contact the Conservation District, who refer to the United States Agriculture Department, at which they're giving us assistance both in how to do it and financial assistance in getting it done. So hopefully our goal is to get rid of all of it.
So yeah, after you get rid of the autumn olive, what do you think you'd do with this land?
We'd like to plant more trees.
Okay.
And turn it into a real area for wildlife, for both breed and live. We're also hunters.
Yeah. So to keep in mind with autumn olive is it does provide food and for wildlife, your pollinators, and cover. Yes, that's there, but there are other things that we can put in place with NRCS. Once Dave finishes this, we can help plan to plant trees, native trees, and then also whether it's wildflowers or grass cover, trees, shrubs that produce berries and wildflowers for wildlife. And that's something you want to plan after. So you can't, you're going to always be trying to manage autumn olive. Your neighbors have it, but we want to get you to the point where maybe once a month after you get under control, going through with your ATV and just scouting and spraying some autumn olive that might be coming back. This initial method of spraying, how thick it is out here, you can expect there's going to be some resprouting in the following year. So it's going to take a little bit of management, but you can be successful. We're in an open field setting with Dave, but he also has forest land where you can creep into also. And if you have forest land, I encourage that you work with the forester and try to develop some type of management plan of how to address it, because if you go through and harvest your forest, you open up that canopy and can result in more spreading of autumn olive and outcompeting your native tree species. So, but yeah, I do want to thank you, Dave, for giving us the opportunity today to come out to your property. And we're going to have Dave being this his property, and he's going to be doing the spraying. If you're working with NRCS with financial assistance, you can either do it yourself, or also there are possible contractors out there that you can hire to do that. In doing so, we'll meet with you beforehand, like with Dave, and just kind of walk through what to expect as you're carrying out the conservation practice, just so you can be safe and also be mindful of the wildlife and where you're spraying. Those are what we like to accomplish in the beginning, and once you get it all done, we want to help you reclaim the land where it's not going to come back to autumn olive.
I am Dr. Greg Corris with the Forestry Assistance Program at the Alpena-Montmorency Conservation District. Today we're looking at some invasive plant management techniques. We've chose these techniques to do a couple things. We want, of course, them to be effective. We also want to use as little chemical, pesticide, herbicide as necessary. It's a poison in the environment. The less we use, the better. And we also want to demonstrate the use of literature to justify our actions. The techniques we are going to talk about today emanate from a series of research papers published in the journal Ecological Restoration. The research was done in the eastern UP on another woody invasive plant called glossy buckthorn. We've been trying the same techniques down here on a few species, including autumn olive, and preliminary results are supportive of the efforts. So, without further ado, let's talk about how does invasive plant management relate to the Forestry Assistance Program mission and that of the Conservation District. I often tell landowners that invasive plants and invasive organisms in general are probably the greatest threat on a day-to-day basis to them meeting their goals on their property and the ecological sustainability of management actions. The Forestry Assistance Program in particular has an emphasis on promoting ecological sustainability in our forests, and one of the things right at the top of the list is invasive plants. So knowing how to manage them effectively and safely is key to us meeting our mission. I also want to talk briefly about integrated pest management. It's a 5-step process of thinking through your actions to be successful in invasive plant management. The first step of integrated pest management is knowing your organism. Every plant, every animal is different, and we got to know what we're treating if we're going to be effective in treating it. The second thing is to understand a literature review. Understand what has been done about management in that species, how effective different approaches are, etc. Step 3 is to monitor the organism's activity. There are some invasive exotics, let's say dandelion in your front lawn, that really aren't causing major problems in the ecosystem. Other organisms like autumn olive here can take over and really alter natural processes and limit achievement of goals. So every species is different. Every species is different threats to the environment, and we gotta monitor their activities and know what's challenging us and what isn't. The fourth thing is to explore treatment options and to conduct treatments based upon hopefully the literature and what is recommended in the literature. And the fifth thing, this is a very common one that's not done too often, but it's very important, is to monitor the effectiveness of treatments. Of the two things that I've seen in my professional career that get short-circuited in these 5 steps, it's literature review. For some reason, many folks don't want to spend the time reading about the organism. And number 2 is monitoring the effectiveness of treatments. So those 2 are very critical in the process and something I encourage everyone to spend some time on. All right, so today we're going to treat autumn olive. These are the tools at hand. We could be using a simple hand pump today. probably the most cost-effective, simple way of treating invasive plants has used very inexpensive hand pumps bought at the local hardware store. I would say, from my experience of 20 some odd years doing this, I have not seen better treatments done because I have a more expensive hand pump than a cheap hand pump. Some of the cheapest hand pumps in the world work just fine. Something to note on all this stuff is that these pesticides are caustic. They break down plastic over time. So every bit of equipment you use, whether it's a hand pump or this 25-gallon battery-operated spray pump, they're going to leak at some point in time. And that's something for you to be aware of and take into account. If it's an herbicide-containing item and it's leaking, then you're going to have some problems. And if that leakage hits on plant material, it has a chance of killing it. So just be aware that a lot of these equipment, over time, they leak. So today we're going to cover the herbicide we're going to use. We're going to cover mixing it, and we're going to cover the use of this 25-gallon pump. We're going to use Garland 3A today. Some people might ask, why Garland 3A? Garland 3A is approved for use in seasonally wet sites, which this site is. That is probably the biggest reason I recommend the use of Garland 3A. There's surely a lot of other herbicides out there that are effective, but Garland 3A shows a quick response. You can see the effectiveness of treatments in 3 to 4 days. It also is seasonally approved for seasonal wetlands. Food for note is the label that comes on this 2.5-gallon container is the rules of the road. These are the laws that govern the use of this chemical. They cover things such as where it can be used, how it can be used, when it can be used, and safety items. So for today, the safety items I have to have on is eye protection, therefore these sunglasses, long sleeve shirt, long pants, boot and shoes, and chemical resistant gloves. These are important to note that they are much thicker than the disposable ones that I see many people use. Do not use those really flimsy disposable ones. You want these thick, heavy rubber gloves. Okay? So, other items to be aware of. We have dye, which can be used to mix in with the herbicide and the water for dilution to simply help you see where you've treated. It's a blue dye. It's a mess. Once you really get good at this process, I suspect you're going to quit using it because it just makes a mess of everything. But early on, when you're learning how to do this and you want to see how good you are, just a cup full of this stuff will last or will work for 25 gallons easily. The other thing that can be used and some people find effective, I have not in the treatments we're doing today, but this is Sidekick. It's a sticker, some people call it. It helps the herbicide diluted with water stay on the plant. So that can be a useful item to also use in the process. Okay, so we're going to dilute this 43.8% active ingredient down to about 2% total active ingredient in what we spray on the plant. For today, we're going to take, it's basically in a 25-gallon tank. It's 1 gallon Garland 3A to 24 gallons water. Why did we come up to 24:1 dilution ratio? One, we wanted to keep it easy for staff. We want to kind of pull out as much thinking really as possible in this and just keep it consistent and simple. The other thing is this is the research results from the Eastern UP. This is what we used up there, so we're being consistent with that. Some people have suggested, and I think people should try, to reduce the ratio even more. You can give it a shot, it can't hurt. So for today, I'm going to use 1/4 gallon to 6 gallons of water. Okay, so we've sprayed 1/4 gallon of Garland 3A into the tank. Now, one of the rules that you'll see on the label is that you're supposed to rinse everything 3 times. So always when you're doing invasive plant management, have as much extra clean water out there as you can. It's just, you never know what happens, and some say dilution is a solution. So we're going to rinse this 3 times. We're going to put this rinseate, they call it, back into the tank. Okay, now we could have added the dye, and we could have added the surfactant or sticker, but we chose not to. Now we've got the mix ready for us, okay? One of the things that you'll note about mixing this, if you have it in the back of a 4-wheeler or a UTV or a pickup truck, just going down the road is going to mix it up plenty. We don't have that today, so I'm just going to slosh it around a little bit, okay? So there we are, we're ready to spray. We've got a 24:1 dilution ratio in our tank. We have not added dye, simply just don't want to make a mess. We did not add the surfactant or the sticker either, and this is primarily because the research we did in the Eastern UP, we didn't use any surfactant in that. But many landowners may want to use the surfactant. Again, it helps the moisture, the sprayed herbicide stick to the leaves. Maybe when you're getting used to doing things or you want to increase your effectiveness, you may want to consider surfactant. Okay, so this sprayer, which I highly recommend, $200 or so at a hardware store or online at forestry suppliers. It requires a 12-volt battery, a simple lead with a switch on it. The nice thing about this sprayer, it allows you to cover a lot more area. It's got an adjustable nozzle that you can twist either way to have a stream or a mist. A lot of times I'm using that in-between treatment, between a mist and a stream. Okay, we're going to lay down some death, as I like to say. So here's our nozzle. That's what I usually like. You see that middle stream there? You can really lay it down from with the setting as I have here. You want to be cognizant of the wind direction. Wind's actually just died down, but it's at my back a little bit. You don't want to spray in high winds. There's all sorts of problems with overdrift and things such as that. You want to make sure it's in dry conditions for at least a few hours after you've sprayed. It's a perfect day to kill autumn olive in this weather we have here. So I tend to think of spraying like I'm painting a barn. Top to bottom, frame it in, and then cover the middle. On plants like these, you would in a perfect situation, you would want to make sure you go around this plant and spray. But I think I just sprayed that for what, 15 seconds? And I believe that's going to be a dead plant in 4 days or so. So you don't have to spray to what they call drip. It doesn't have to be so wet that you see the diluted herbicide dripping off the leaves. You want about 50% coverage on your leaves. And what you'll see when you come back in a few days, you'll actually see those plants that you've sprayed well and those plants that you've kind of missed a few areas. Okay, so we've covered the herbicide, we've covered integrated pest management, we've covered safety, we've covered the methodology that we're using to treat these plants. We're trying to manage, not control, but we're trying to manage autumn olive here and reduce its dominance so the landowner's goals can be met and ecological integrity can be promoted. A few miscellaneous items to discuss. So we've used a 24:1 dilution ratio with Garlon 3A, yielding about a 2% active ingredient solution. I have personally and professionally used that same solution on multiflora rose, glossy buckthorn, autumn olive, Tartarian honeysuckle, leafy spurge, spotted knapweed, purple loosestrife, and maybe something else. And my experience has been very favorable with all those species. The toughest one in my career to kill are honeysuckle, Tartarian honeysuckle. There's native bush honeysuckle, you got to be aware of those, and multiflora rose. That said, repeated treatments did prove effective. Couple other things. When is the best time to treat, people may ask. I would say anytime during the growing season. The plant is pulling the herbicide in, so you want green material on it. You want it translocating and conducting material up and down the plant. So anytime during the growing season is a good time to treat. I particularly like treating in the early fall, September, late August. Just the weather is good, and the plants seem to be very active still. So anytime during the growing season when the plant is green is a good time to treat. Weather conditions of the day of treatment are important. Again, dry, calm conditions. I can't think of anything else. Do you guys have any questions?
I actually do. In our experience, we've had a lot of landowners come to us asking questions about this, and they have been cutting the stumps and then trying to treat the stump. What do you think about that, Greg? What is the difference between the two treatments? I mean, when you just do chemical, or if you cut the stump and then treat it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with any invasive plant, there's mechanical methods that could be used. There's chemical methods, that's what we talked about today. There's behavioral mechanisms, ways that you interact with the plant and just simply how you behave that could, in theory, work to manage the plant. So my career and the research that I talked about in the journal Ecological Restoration really got going because colleagues with a conservancy in Michigan came to my employer in the eastern UP, and they saw we had a glossy buckthorn issue, and they gave a word of mouth recommendation. And my colleagues really didn't do their due diligence and look at the literature to justify the actions that we were told to do. And the reason we did the research is we found the method, which was a cut stump method. You would cut the stump, and when it was still green, you would apply herbicide at fairly high concentrations. We found that treatment was not effective. And so one of the major papers we did in the Journal Ecological Restoration was to compare cut stump treatments to foliar treatments. And that's why I promote the spraying like I do, really low concentrations and spray it on the plant. You know, this plant's now going to die. It's going to dry out in the next few weeks, and it's going to be standing here, and many people are going to find that potentially unsightly. That's a drawback of this method. Another drawback of this method is any spraying that you do that doesn't hit this plant and hits other green vegetation is going to kill it. That's not a selective herbicide. It basically kills anything green that it touches. So there tends to be a little bit of extra mortality to plants that you aren't targeting. So be aware of its use if there's threatened endangered species or protected areas or things you really want to be gentle around. But other than that, I believe the cut stump treatment is more laborious, both in time and it takes more money. I think in the long run, spraying is going to show to be more effective and more efficient with your time. Some people think that after this is dead, that those remaining woody stumps, if you want to call them, from this plant just drying and breaking off, those stumps may puncture tires. I have no experience with that. I can't comment on that. but it is something maybe to be aware of. But if the primary focus is to efficiently and effectively kill autumn olive, this currently is what I suggest.
After spraying it, you can tell that the plant dies. Greg, what would you expect a year from now, saying this area is sprayed and the landowner wanted to kind of clear some of the area? What would you suggest? Does the plant, is it still pretty strong or hard to knock over, or does it break down?
Yeah, in a year this will be brittle. So in a year by hand, this will break incredibly easy. That one even broke easily after almost a week. I think what you'll see is winter will, once this dries out, winter snows and winter wind will break down a lot of this. What you're going to see is you're going to just see patchy brown throughout this property. You're going to see some areas on the ground that got sprayed and they too will be dead. But if the landowner gets aggressive with this spraying, in a month, this place is going to be pretty brown. And in 6 months, that stuff that's brown is going to be brittle and breaking off. And in a year, again, I can't comment on the tire issue. This whole place could be, you could take a tractor in theory and just drive through strips through this property and crush any stuff that's remaining. But I would give it a solid year and then start doing any activities you want to do, maybe planting conifers or whatever.
So with that, is there a possibility of anything else under this plant sprouting? Another autumn olive, for instance?
Yeah, it's a great question. Glossy buckthorn, where I spent most of my career working with, was incredibly tenacious because its seeds were in the seed bank. The soil stores seeds dropped by this plant on an annual basis. Buckthorn, when we killed the adult plants and gave sunlight to the soil directly underneath the plant, the seedlings just would be abundant. They just flourish when that sunlight hit the soil. What we would do is come back a year later and do a secondary treatment to get any resprouts, which weren't that many, but also treat the seedlings. From my limited experience in northeastern Lower Michigan with autumn olive, I'm surprised that there's not more seedlings after we kill these adults. There will be some seedlings. I would always expect more than I typically see. It may be that these seeds do not persist in the seed bank as well as glossy buckthorn. It may be the soils these plants are growing on are just drier and the seeds desiccate and die. I don't know. It doesn't hurt, like I said in the 5 steps of integrated pest management, monitoring. So the landowners should keep track of where they treated, when they treated, how they treated, and then come back in 6 weeks, 6 months, a year, and evaluate the effectiveness.